All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock. We'll have some more people coming in as we go. Welcome to Video Game Makers Unite. This is the final show of 2020. I know this is the year that seems like two and maybe three, but we made it at least this far. And oh, by the way, I'm Jolly. I'm absolutely not the one you came to see tonight, but my name is John Henderson, and I will be your host. We have Michelle Habecker and Katie Kelly, both from the Texas Film Commission, and they are prepared with their slides, and they're going to be talking with us about all the reasons there are to do business in the entertainment industry, as well as the incentives within the state of Texas. We'll be admitting lots of people that are coming in late. We're very used to that, so I'm going to take care of a few bits of business. And any of you who are looking for a job or looking to hire, we will be doing that once I get through this list of things that I wanted to talk about. Uh, First, a couple bits of news. Just this week, it was announced that South by Southwest is not planning on having a live show in March. They are going to be doing a virtual digital show of some kind between March 16th and 20th, with more information to follow. And PAX South, which normally would happen in San Antonio last weekend or third weekend in January, will not be happening. One thing that will be happening is the Global Game Jam. However, no one will be encouraging anyone to be jamming in person. Again, that will probably be all done online. And I have personal knowledge that the one for Austin will continue in one form or another, probably largely using Discord and or Zoom. More information about that will hopefully be coming before the holiday break officially starts. But a couple shout outs. Since we had our last show 2 months ago, Demon Souls for the PS5 came out. Too much fanfare, and two studios here in Austin, Blue Point Games and Enduring Games, have credits for both of those. So congratulations to the teams working on that. Fallout 76, administered here in Austin by Bethesda Game Studios, released Steel Dawn new expansion. Ongoing way to show what a post-apocalyptic West Virginia looks like and how much fun it is to romp around and drop more nukes on it. Also, Wizard 101, also made here in Austin, venerable MMO for kids, just put out a new zone of the game, Caramel, for all the dessert-themed adventures in wizarding that you can find. So congratulations to all the game devs in Austin to continue to make new games and release them and put new content for products that are continue to have people who want to play them. And I want to give a self shout out, sort of. The team known as LSSC, also known as the final cohort for the Game Design and Development Lab at Hoft Institute that I had worked on until February this year. That team graduated, but they continue to work together and finish up their game. So their game Vessels is now available on itch.io as well as Steam. Please give that a look. It's only $6 and you get a fine little Unreal-based walk around sci-fi adventure on board a spaceship where you start out in an airlock and the whole crew wants you dead. And they may have good reason for that. Also, this is not game related, but we're very proud to be friends with folks at Powerhouse Studios here in Austin. And it was also announced that the second season of Blood of Zeus, their Greek mythology series, got picked up for another season on Netflix. So hear more about that before too long, as well as the fourth season of Castlevania, which will probably be announcing before too long. Also have some sad news. Our friend Michael Washburn, that some people may know, had been an artist in the Austin area, native of the Temple Belton area, died last week at the age of 50. He had been battling an illness before long, but his credits include Conquest, Deus Ex, Deus Ex Invisible War, DC Universe Online, and most recently Ruby Grim Eclipse. And we will miss you, Mikey. But so far, we've only got about 15 people there, but I'll point you out to the raise your hand option. If you have, let's say, if you're someone looking for a job in the game industry, please be prepared to say your full name and what your aspirations are, as well as any information about how we can find out about you. If you don't have a microphone for whatever reason, and I think most people have one by now, but you can use the chat to talk to us. But if anyone's looking for work right now, please raise your hand. And I will call them.
John, I'll kick in one thing. Daybreak got sold.
Daybreak, that's right, has new owners.
Mhm.
That did get announced. So Dimension Inc., the Daybreak in Austin, that was a bit of news. Don't know much about the owners except I've read their name once, and I don't know who they are. They also own Piranha Games, the Mech Warrior people.
Good evening.
Thank you for that. So anyone in the chat who's looking for work?
Me. That would be me. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Oscar, go.
Yes, that is correct. So my name is Oscar Habecker.
Please speak up a little higher, a little louder.
Can you hear me?
Good. Go ahead.
Maybe it's better if I type it on the chat. I'll leave most of the information on the chat just in case. So that way you guys can find me as well. But just a quick presentation. My name is Oscar V. Araque. I am a video game designer professional with master's degree and everything. Currently looking for production jobs, associate producer, project manager, game designer. Those are my specialties. And I can also do 3D art fairly well, but I haven't done that in at least 2 years. So I prefer to stick with producer positions if possible.
Okay. Thank you, Oscar. Everyone look in chat for what he puts there. Anyone else before I go to the, okay, we got one.
Hi.
Kyle.
Hey, John. Thanks. Kyle Reinfeld. I'm a game designer and Unity developer. Unity has been my primary toolkit for 7 years. During that time, I've made some interesting things. One thing I showed last year was an original arcade game that the Austin Chronicle named second best Austin made game of 2019. So that was fun. Also, for the last 3 years, I've taught game development for a really awesome company here in town called Game Worlds. And at this point, I'm actively interviewing for paid full-time work to the extent there are any folks actively hiring or know of any opportunities. And I will leave my contact information in the chat.
Very good. Thank you, Kyle. Luis Martinez.
Hello, I'm Luis Martinez. I'm a concept artist and storyboard artist for video games and sometimes film. I even do photography. So I will also leave my stuff in the chat, but it's a website called mrjin.com. It's MRJIYN.com. So yeah, I've been doing this for 8-9 years, but yeah, so that's it. Looking for work. Yeah.
Alia.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Alia Dimina. I have a background in production, an associate production. I worked at a company named Saber Interactive at their Russian office, but and I also have a background in narrative design and story writing. So I'm looking to combine those two and break into the game design, and also leave my info in the chat. And thank you for this opportunity.
Very good. Thank you. And Anna Reed.
Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Anna. I've worked in the game industry in 3D art, as well as like quality assurance and testing. But I recently kind of made a swivel to the more technical side of things, like software development. So yeah, I graduated from coding boot camp, and now I'm just kind of looking for a job. So nice to meet all you. Thanks for organizing this.
Thanks for coming. Yes, please use the chat to spread any information to have a little more permanence and let people know who you are. Okay, let's go to the job haves. Who is looking to hire? Gordon, you had mentioned it beforehand, so you want to start us off?
Yeah, I have a senior Unity position available and Unity programming position and a very junior Unity design position open at Artcraft Entertainment. You can find us at crowfall.com. I'll put it in the chat with the jobs link.
Thank you, Gordon. Anyone else who's looking to hire at this time? I actually have something where I had told a friend of mine who's got an indie project here in Austin and needs a writer that I was able to help out, but I think I need to tag out on this. But it's a sci-fi themed narrative driven game that's mainly for dressing up and showing as proof of concept for a new API and Unity that's a lot like Inkle, but with different syntax, and the edits for text will show up on diffs. So anyone who wants to take over writing for a narrative-driven game, please contact me afterwards. Okay, well, we'll probably get some more people coming in as we go, but I think that's about all the business we have to talk about at this time.
I'll drop some info about the local companies in chat also for those of you looking.
Very good. And
I was also going to say, stay tuned too. There's some information in the presentation that you'll find interesting.
Very good, yeah. You're all going to be glad you're here tonight. Well, at this time, I think it's time for me to introduce our speakers. Both are representatives from the Texas Film Commission. Michelle Habecker is a production incentive specialist, and Katie Kelly is a marketing specialist. And I really just read their first slide. We're very glad to have them both with us, and I will now turn it over to them.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Gordon. I know Michelle and I are both very happy to be here and be able to share resources and programs that our office supplies and offers to Texans. So.
And actually, one thing I forgot to say, we will have Q&A at the end of their speech. We'll have an intermission, and then they will come back to answer your questions.
Okay, here we go. Who we are? Well, we are the Texas Film Commission, and we're a state agency that was created in 1971, and we're housed within the Office of the Governor under the Division of Economic Development and Tourism, commonly known as EDT. And in 2006, we expanded to include digital media industries, which would encompass animation, video games, XR, extended reality. And the Film Commission's goal is to support the state's global position as the premier production destination across all media industries. The TFC staff is divided into 4 different departments within our division. We've got our administration team, which is headed by Stephanie Whalen, our director, and Lindsay Ashley, our deputy director. We also have a production department that can help with locations, permits, film-friendly contacts, filming on state properties, things of that nature. We also have our incentives department, which Michelle will talk more when her turn is up, about the incentive program, which I'm sure there's some interest about. And I'm a marketing specialist within our marketing department. I'll talk a little bit about some of the resources and programs that we provide. So as an overview, we have several programs and resources within our office. We have the Media Production Development Zone Program, the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program, more commonly known as TMII, and we have the Film Friendly Texas Program, the Texas Archive of the Moving Image, and we offer student internships. Although during times of COVID, that's on hold. We also have resources such as the Texas Production Directory, our job hotline, which I'll go into more detail on in a little bit for those of you looking for work. We have an events calendar, sponsorships and partnerships, location services, and the Texas Film Trails. So what is the Texas Production Directory? Well, it is an online resource guide for productions looking to hire crew. You can list yourself in there for free. but you must have a Texas address and at least one paid verifiable professional media industry related job credit for that designation. We've got roughly 400 listings, which are crew and vendors, university programs, university programs such as SMU's Guild Hall and Texas A&M VisLab program are listed within there. We also have professional organizations and unions, such as a bunch of short guys, Women in Games International, amongst many more, as well as events and conferences. We were discussing PAX South earlier. That would be one of the conferences that's typically listed within there, as well as Game Expo, Project Horseshoe, Industry Giants, amongst others. We have recently done some updates to the directory categories where we've done an overhaul over a lot of things, but specifically for the gaming industry, we condensed the category into game design and development. Previously, it was split up into like 5 different categories. Now it's the one game design and development. And then the subcategory is designer level. Instead of having it broken into level designer and specific things, it's designer or programmer, things of that nature. We have also split the animation and visual effects into 2 separate buckets. So there's now one, if you're an animation company or a visual effects company, you can distinguish that as well. And we've added a few other subcategories for crowd artist and further defined motion graphics as either a motion graphic artist or motion graphics company. So if you identify as one versus the other, you can update your listing for that. We also have kind of a fun thing that we just launched this week called the At Work With series, which is spotlighting the names and businesses within the production directory. So we're trying to represent all levels of experience, geography, industry. So we're going to showcase, like the very first one was a documentary filmmaker, but we're also reaching out to game companies. So we're hoping to put the spotlight on a game company somewhere along the line. But one of the requirements is that you have to be in the directory to be showcased. But it's kind of a fun way to put a spotlight on the talent that's in Texas. So moving along, we have our job hotline. Those of you who are looking for work, you might want to check that out. It is a free resource. We have 3 sections. We've got film and TV production, casting crew calls. We have the industry related jobs and game design, development, and animation jobs. So if you are looking at our website, you would want to go to the job hotline tab and then look to the right for the digital media jobs. And I update that on a bi-weekly basis. And Gordon, I think you're in there. I think your company's in there. I'm almost positive. If you should have a job that if you are one of the game companies and you have a job and you want to specifically target specific positions, because right now I have it set up where it will go to your job posting page. But if you want a little more detail to display on ours, you could use the industry jobs application and we could get it posted for you. It's free to list, and you just would review the rules and requirements and make sure that you meet those, fill out the online application, and usually within 2-3 days, I have it up on the site, and I shoot you an email and let you know when it's there. So that's a good thing to have. And other resources that our office provides. We have an events calendar, also under our resources tab, which lists different festivals and conferences. We also, I just happened to think of one thing I forgot to mention regarding the digital media job hotline. ACC, Austin Community College, just recently submitted postings. They were looking for game design and development faculty as well as 3D environment art faculty. So that is a case where somebody actually did utilize the job hotline application, and that's been posted recently. So jumping back, sorry, events calendar. We've got the festivals and conferences that we'll list on it, networking events such as Video Game Makers Unite, like this one tonight is there. If there are Q&A and panel opportunities or workshops, those go up there as well. So if you have industry related events that are happening, if you want to reach out, let me know. Give me at least a week notice or more, and that way you can get a little more eyeballs looking at it. We'll get you posted. We also provide sponsorships and partnerships for various events. Under our production tab on our website, there is the production FAQ, which has a PDF link to some video game grants and scholarships that might be of interest to some of you in the audience. We also have under our resource tab a small business owners in Texas information, which hyperlinks to various things such as starting a business, what incentives are out there for small business owners, permitting, how that works, as well as funding opportunities, and through the SBA as well. We have, so starting off on the first program that we have in our office, it's called the Media Production Development Zone Program, which allows for a sales and use tax exemption for construction, maintenance, expansion, improvement, or renovation of a media production facility at a qualified media production location over a 2-year period. So, media production facilities include, but are not limited to, animation studios, post-production facilities, sound stages, video game development studios, production office space. Here is kind of the different phases to apply for the program, and we'll walk through that step by step. One of the things I want to define here is that a project, when we're referring to a project, this is a infrastructure project. It's brick and mortar, it's a building, it's an expansion or renovation, a construction of a facility. This is not a video game grant. That would be something Michelle will cover in the incentive program. So the first step is for a project to submit an application to their local municipality or county that has jurisdiction over the location that they want to build on. So we've had 2 companies go through the program already. Certain Affinity here in Austin and Red Productions up in Fort Worth, who have gone through the process. So in Certain Affinity's instance, they had to go to the city of Austin. Red Productions had to go to the city of Fort Worth. So their local city council or county commissioners court certified that the project for the local benefits. Then the next step would be the comptroller certifying that the project has positive impact on the state revenue. And then the Media Production Advisory Committee recommends use of the exemption for the project. And then the final step is that it comes to the Film Commission, and we designate the location and certify that the project is granted the exemption. There is a really great, more detailed flow chart on our website. If you go to our programs tab for the Media Production Development Zone program, down about 3/4 of the way, there's helpful links, and there's a great flow chart that goes into a detail of here are the steps in the process. So that's something, if you're interested in that, can kind of give you an overview, but a little more detail than this right here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who will talk about our incentive program.
Great, thank you, Katie. And thank you all for inviting us to join you this evening. I am Michelle, I'm part of our incentive team. I'm gonna talk about the incentive program. Katie's gonna continue powering our PowerPoint, so you might hear me just kind of communicate with her a little bit about that. But also wanted to, if we didn't bring this up yet, you'll hear us referring a lot to our website, so the Texas Film Commission website. You can either look it up later, or if you have more than one monitor with you tonight, it's if you just kind of go online and search Texas Film Commission, that should bring up our website. We have a lot of programs and resources. We really are doing like a kind of bullet point overview of some of the things here this evening, but there is a lot of information on the website, all those things that Katie was talking to you about. There's just even more information, so you can really kind of search through and find things there. And we're happy to, if you go online and you find some questions, we're happy to address any questions later on as well. But we do refer a lot to our website. We do have all this information on our website, and as Katie mentioned, all of our programs and resources are free, and that is also true of our incentive program. So officially, the incentive program is called the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program, TMII for short. We refer to that generally just as the incentive program, and I think pretty much across industries, people kind of refer to them generally as the incentive program. To make the distinction, as Katie did earlier, this program is different than the MPDZ program that she just talked about. That is about buildings. Like if you have a company that you want to build a building for or renovate a building, that's what that tax exempt program does. This program, TMII, is incentivizing the making of a project in terms of like, is it a game? Is it a commercial? Is it a television show? That type of a thing. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about. I am specifically within the incentives team, the point of contact for any commercial video games or XR projects that come through our incentive program. There's 3 of us on the team. My colleagues Tara and Lee are also, we all kind of do multiple things. If you are a company that is thinking of applying to the program, probably the first person you will talk to is Lee. But if you are a game applicant, you will probably ultimately have a lot of communications with me. So, okay, I think I'm ready. Thanks, Katie.
It is not wanting to move.
Just look at
Oh,
us.
there we go. Sorry about that. I don't know why.
Thank
I was
you.
like, I'm using the down button, same one I've been using all along. What's going on?
It would be a
Technology,
presentation
great.
if there wasn't a technology issue, right? So anyway,
Technology.
I am going to give you a very broad overview of the program. I'm assuming everybody has like a screen that you can see, but in case it's too small or something, I'll kind of make sure that I specifically point out each bullet point and then expand upon it a little bit. So the program overview for TMII is that it provides qualifying productions the opportunity to receive a cash grant based on a percentage of that project's eligible tax spend. There's a few things within that statement there. First of all, you have to qualify for the program. I'll talk a little bit about what some of those qualifications are in our next slide. And the program is a cash grant. There are incentive programs throughout all the states, practically across different countries around the world. They all operate a little bit differently depending on how that program is set up, where the program is housed. As Katie mentioned earlier, our office is within the Office of the Governor's Economic Development and Tourism, so that influences a lot of the way our program is set up. So it is a cash grant. It's actually functions as a rebate. So you get basically a check at the end of the project if your project comes through the program. And the amount that comes through is based on eligible Texas spend. And I'll kind of talk a little bit what that means a little bit later on as we go through too. So next overview point is the Texas spend includes wages paid to Texas residents and payments made to Texas vendors. I know at the very beginning of this evening, a couple of people mentioned their artists, I think, and I think we had some designers, maybe producers. So when it comes to our video game applicants to the program, a lot of what is Texas spend is the wages paid to you all. So if there's a company that has a game project that's coming through the program, what they're claiming as Texas spend is the things that they're spending money on, or you, if you are, that company itself, the person of the company that is making the game. And a lot of that does come down to your programmers, your designers, your artists, your QA people, the wages paid to the people that are actually making the game that's going to be released out into the world. So that's what Texas spend is. Grant percentages vary by budget levels. So there's a tier system, there's a minimum spend, which I'll talk about a little bit, but depending on how much that project's Texas spend is, the grant that is set aside and then ultimately paid out on a project when they complete the program is a percentage based on how much money that project is spending. Grant percentages vary by budget level, cover that one, sorry. And then the fourth point here is grant payments are issued upon completion of a review of the project's Texas spend expenditures. So again, the projects coming through the program and through the incentive program apply on a project basis. You apply on the front end before you even start production. And then once you complete the project, you're going to submit documentation of your spend. If you are the applicant, and all of that paperwork gets reviewed before a check is actually cut. So we do verify that if you say you're spending $500,000, to make a game project, that you are indeed spending that money. So there is a review that goes through not just our office at the TFC, but it goes through the state auditors, the compliance office as well. So, and that is true of all grant programs with the Office of the Governor. Great, thanks, Katie. It's going to give us a.
It's doing it again. I wonder if it's because I'm muting myself.
Maybe. Don't mute yourself.
I won't mute myself. I'll just be quiet. Sorry. Like
Awesome.
it gets paused. I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you, Katie. So these I mentioned earlier, there are qualifying points that a project needs to make. There are specific minimum requirements for all types of projects. We have all different types of what we call moving image projects that come through the program. So there's video games, there are films, there's commercials, there's TV shows, there's all kinds of different, under the umbrella of moving image projects. And so you'll see some of the qualifiers. Some of them are a little bit different for game projects than they are for TV, but let me just kind of point some of them out here. One of them, and the first one that's listed here, is that at least 60% of the total production days on that project must take place in Texas. So that is through all projects. So if you have a company and the company is maybe more than one location, or you're outsourcing or something like that, it's something to think about when you're talking about meeting the 60% requirement. Another requirement separate from the actual number of production days and making sure that they're happening in the state of Texas is that at least 70% of the paid cast and crew must be Texas residents. It's a little bit different for film and TV projects than it is for the commercial and video game projects. For film and TV projects, that is 70% of what's cast and 70% of what's paid crew. In our game applications, that is a combined total. And also just to clarify, we use the words cast and crew. Cast means like your actors or your voice actors. Crew are the people that are actually making the game in terms of, again, your artists, your designers, your programmers. We use the word crew because that encompasses both employees of a company. So if you work for a game company and you're an artist, or if a company hires independent contractors to do the same jobs, but as an independent contractor. So if you're essentially an artist and you work for the company, the video game company, or you're an artist working as an independent contractor, you're considered crew for the sake of this program. And the 70% residency requirement is a head count. So everybody counts the same. And so basically, if you had 10 people working on a particular project, 7 of them must be Texas residents for that project to qualify for the program. We do have a form. If you get a chance to check out our website, you can look under the incentives drop-down menu there about all the things having to do with the incentive program. One of those is about forms and guidelines. There's a lot more information in our program guidelines, but there is a form called the Declaration of Texas Residency Form. That form is a one-page form, super straightforward, but anybody that is a Texas resident that's working on a project completes that form, and that form gets submitted with the documentation at the end of the production. So if you've ever worked for a company and they've had you fill out a Declaration of Texas Residency form, it's probably because that particular project you're working on is coming through the incentive program, and they are looking to prove that you are indeed a Texas resident. Just kind of like related to that, not on our slide, but I do hear there's a bunch of people here that are like programmers and artists and looking for jobs and all of that. The DTR form, that Texas Declaration of Residency form, what for the program qualifies as a Texas resident is someone that has their Texas state issued ID 120 days before the first day of production on that particular job, whatever that project is that's coming through our program. So usually most folks use their Texas driver's license, but also their Texas ID, but that's a really important point. Or if you've ever had to fill out the form, this is what it's for. It's just they have to prove that you are a Texas resident to meet the requirements for the program. And then kind of jumping to the other side of the slide here, minimum Texas spend. So for film and TV shows, that's $250,000 of, again, we use that word, but eligible Texas spend. For video games, commercials, and VFX projects for commercials, that is $100,000. And that is not the total budget for the project. That is specifically what spend is going to qualify for the incentives. And for a lot of our video game applicants, that is largely the wages that are paid to, the people that are making a game, again, programmers and artists, designers that are actually making the game that people are going to play. So those are kind of the broad, the kind of like the big minimum requirements that a project makes. So if you have if you have a company or you're thinking of starting a company and you're thinking about the incentive, these are things to keep in mind. Projects that come through the program vary dramatically in the size of the project, how many people are working on them, what they're doing. They could be like a AAA large game, or they can be a small independent like game or a mobile app. So there's a lot of projects that kind of qualify under the umbrella of a video game. So Katie, let's give it a shot for the next slide. Awesome. Thank you. So this infographic here is information about our incentive program. So for TMIP, and the data on this, if anyone's like a kind of a data geek that likes to know the information, this is one sheet that we've put together. The information on here, I don't know if you can see it on your screens or not clearly because there is some smaller print on this. But this is information that is literally from kind of the life of our incentive program. And we recently updated it through August 31st of 2008. And the information here is reflects the sum of actual spend. Again, this is the Texas spend that I just kind of talking about a little bit of Texas spend projects that have come through the program or might currently be still in the program. But some of the big numbers there at the top, if you're looking for some interesting facts, is 1.66 billion in in-state spending has happened from projects that, that have shown that they've spent this money that come through our program. The next number there you see is that over 157,000 Texas jobs were created. Those are all verified by our DTR firm. And then you'll see at the end there, at the top there, that the return on investment is 511%, which means that for every dollar we paid out in grant money, the applicants combined showed that they were spending at least $5.11 in the state. So that's a pretty good return on investment there. Some other fun information on that one sheet, but some things you might specifically be interested about it. If thinking about the incentive is that the bottom corner there, it says a little chart of kind of specific projects. These are kind of like a little bit of like a commercial project, a game project, a reality show, I think is in there, but kind of like, you know, not one swing big, one swing small, but kind of like in the middle range of some of the things that we see. But you'll see in the very bottom corner there, it says 3.9 million. That was the spend of a video game company in Houston that had production for 194 days. And then just kind of on the other side of the road there, you'll see that there was 1.5 million in spend by an animation company in Austin, and that production was 302 days. So anyway, this information, this one sheet is actually on our website. So if you're interested in seeing it or sharing it with somebody, if you go into the incentives portion of our website and the drop down, I believe it's under, we just updated it. Katie might remember, but it is, I think it's about resources or impacts or something like that. But you can find it
I think it's under incentives economic impact. We actually just moved it on the website.
Yeah, we just moved it in the last week. So hopefully that makes sense because it is all team up related, but it is there and anyone can see it at any time. And we do keep all of our information. The program guidelines about the incentive on the website is available at any point. You don't have to be coming through the program. The DTR form is always there too. You can always call us and ask us questions, but if you're looking for something, you can hopefully find it on the website there too. So great, Katie, next slide, please. So this information here is specific to video game projects. So the infographic that we just looked at, that was for all projects. This one here is very specifically numbers for our, video game applicants that have come through our program and have completed the program successfully. It's the same time period. Basically, this is up through August 31st of this past year. So you'll see the first bullet point is we've had 176 video game projects successfully complete that program, meaning they've applied, they've gone through it, and they've received their grant check at the end of it. The next point was that 6,900 permanent Texas residents worked on those projects. Again, that goes back to those DTRs that they were able to verify those numbers. And then over $31 million in grants were paid out over the course, and this is going to game applicants. And it looks like almost 300 million in verified Texas spend was generated by the video game companies in the program. So again, that goes to Texas spend specifically. There may be other spend that's going, being spent or things that are happening, but this is specifically what's considered Texas spend to the program. And the ROI on that is $8.37 for every dollar of grant money spent. So that's pretty good. I shouldn't say that, but I think it's pretty good. Thank you, Katie. We can go on to the next slide. All right, so we have 2 slides of kind of team tips for success, so calling them do's and don'ts. Mostly what it is things that we kind of see happening or things that we can kind of communicate to applicants or potential applicants about the program and things, to kind of help you successfully kind of come through the program and get as much back on your grant as you can. I will read them just in case everyone isn't seeing them, but then expand upon them. The first one, do reach out to us as soon as you start pre-production development or concept work. the program is you must apply to the incentive program before you start production. The way our program is set up, the start of production for game applicants is the creation of assets. There are some things with the program that are hard and fast. We don't have wiggle room on, and the application window is one of those. It helps us help you as an applicant to be able to talk to you about your project as soon as you think you might be interested, so we can kind of help you through the program and answer questions on the front end. Planning is crucial the whole way through, but really kind of as soon as you think you might be interested, like take a look at the information on the website, reach out to us, send us an inquiry form or give us a call, but do think about it before you are like actually in the production stage of it, so that we can help you through it. The next point, do designate both a production and an accounting contact for the duration of the entire project. And we say 2 months after that, but I would say as long as possible. We've included this, and I can speak specifically to this just as the video game contact person. A lot of times, specifically with game applicants, we'll be talking to somebody maybe that is really good with all of, like, they know the game and they're like the head of the game maybe, and they've got all the details about the game, but their strengths might not lay in the accounting part of it, or the paper part, or the numbers part. Or on the flip side, you know, the contact might be an accounting person, but that person might not necessarily be very involved in the actual production of the game. Both these things are really important for the incentive program and coming through the incentive program successfully. So it really does help to be able to have that communication just from your side of it, making sure those folks on your side, if you're interested, are interested, but also when you're talking to our office, because a lot of the things that we're going to be communicating about will encompass both of those things. So it's good to have someone or all the people that might be, you know, knowledgeable on those things involved. Next point, do figure out when your first project asset will be created. The window to apply starts 120 days before that start date. This relates to the first thing that I talked about, but that application window is 120 days before the first day of production, but it closes 5 business days before the first day of production. You have to apply within that time period. There's not like a, oops, can we do it after the fact, unfortunately. So it's really important that you do start planning on the front end to be able to make that application window. The next point was, do be very mindful of any work done outside of Texas. As I mentioned, there is a requirement of 60% of the production days must take place in Texas. So you do need to know if you're doing any kind of production outside of the state of Texas to be able to be eligible for the program. And things change in production. So things change all the time, but things change, budget changes, you know, plans change. So when you apply to the program in the front end, you do need to know your budget and kind of what you're doing. But knowing that it does change, just keep that in mind, that if things change, you got to do what's best for your project. But you need to keep in mind the requirements for the program, just to make sure that those still hold true. And then the last point here is, do focus on your Texas employee contractor wages. And just saying that relates back to what I was talking about earlier. A lot of the eligible Texas spend will be the wages that were paid to the people making the game. So that is something just to be aware of, and making sure you're getting the DTR forms. A couple more tips on the next slide. The first one here is, do not assume that everyone on your in-house team has a valid Texas driver's license, voter registration, or school ID. This goes back to that Declaration of Texas Residency form, the ID that whether you're the person filling out the form, you know, because you're working for a company that's coming through, or you're the company that's, you know, having people fill out, you know, the form, you know, that as the actual programmers or the artists. The ID must have been issued 120 days before that first day of production, which is asset creation. The program is very much, again, if you think back, we are part of the Office of the Governor's Economic Development and Tourism. So hiring Texas residents, people that actually are living here in Texas, is a big part of the program. So proving that the people actually working on the project are Texas residents, that's what this 120 days goes to. So one of the things that we have found is that, you know, we're talking to somebody on the front end and they're getting everything ready and they're like, oh yeah, everybody that works for me is a Texas resident. And then they go to have people fill out the form and people have been living here for a year or whatnot, and they don't have any Texas ID. And unfortunately, if that's the case, they don't count as a resident for the program. So if you are someone that has recently moved here or hasn't gotten your Texas ID yet, that is just something to be aware of, that that is how residency is determined for the sake of this particular program. Next point is, do not wait until the project is complete to try and collect all your paperwork. There is paperwork involved in this. You do have to show proof of your Texas spend. It is not something that you can throw together in the course of a weekend. There are also, I will tell you, some milestones and deliverables throughout the program where you do need to keep in touch with us, which is the final point where it says don't disappear. There are, you know, you do need to let us keep updated on what's happening. There's a lot of activity sometimes on the front end when you're applying to the incentives, and then at the back end when, you know, you've finished production on your project and you're looking to put your paperwork together. But we do require, as part of the award for being in the program, the contract does require that you keep in touch with us, and there are certain milestones in terms of communicating with us. And also we help you to kind of go through the things that you need to do. So please don't disappear. Okay, great. I think that's all of our tips. And then this last slide and the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about, how to become a community, how can a community become more digital media friendly? Katie mentioned at the very, very beginning of this presentation that we have a program that's called the Film Friendly Texas program. One of our colleagues meets with representatives from a town, a community, like community leaders from their, like basically trying to build, anyone that's trying to like economic development within your town, to talk to them about what happens when a production comes to town. This is largely geared to live action productions like film and TV and whatnot, but it's basically for those stakeholders in that community to understand, like, when all the trucks show up, what does that mean? And, you know, how do you interact with those folks? And also to educate them, those community leaders, on the economic impact of having a production like that come to your town, and to be able to make the connection between the production and then the people that live there, and how that relationship can work. We mentioned that program earlier, and I'm bringing it up here and mentioning in this slide, partially because we have recently started doing the digital media friendly programs. In a time pre-COVID, literally our colleague Kim would go to the town in Texas and have like a little in-person like presentation she would do. Now with the current state of things, we are doing these presentations digitally, and we are now switching and also doing presentations for the digital media communities. So this slide is actually from that presentation. Just wanted to share what kind of the things that we're talking to those community leaders about digital media production, not live action, but actual digital media and things that they can do to try to help build connections with the digital media industry. So the first thing there is identify community stakeholders and create a digital media friendly advisory board. The next thing is attend digital media industry events to better understand digital media workforce culture and needs. Next is market your community to digital media companies. And then finally, partner with digital media programs at nearby colleges and universities, retain emerging talent. So we're all kind of talking about trying to make connections. And that's largely what our office does, is try to help people make things here in Texas under these type of moving image industries, and then connect people to the different people or resources or communities, things that can help you all do that. So that is our last kind of official slide. We have, I think, a Q&A coming up after this. We do have, this is Katie and my information, the information too that shows our website. We also, if you get a chance to go to the website, we also do some social media. We have a Twitter account and we also do Facebook posts. So it's great, especially if you're looking to connect to others, to kind of get connected to us using those different digital media platforms. You can just kind of sign up and kind of get that information. And that's a great way for us to be able to keep in contact with you. I am going to give this back to John, I think, or just Katie, did you have something else to say?
If I can interject one thing, John, before you take back over. We also on our main page of our website, we have a newsletter that'll, if you have an interest in signing up, we do a monthly newsletter, or it's usually bi-monthly, but because we're entering a legislative session, we produce it monthly to keep the industries apprised of what's going on in the industry. So if you're curious about what's going on, that's a good thing to sign up for too.
I can vouch for that. I'm on there.
You're on it?
Thank you
Good
very
deal.
much for that. All right, well, we're at our midpoint here and we will have questions, but why don't we check our timepieces and count down 10 minutes from now, and we'll just come back after that. And thanks very much for Katie and Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, we are back, and because I forgot to mention it beforehand, we are continuing to do this show in cooperation with Capital Factory, and we thank Alex Wiesenthal and their staff for use of their Zoom. We would be using their facilities, but of course it's not really safe to do that right now. At this time, we're going to start calling on people who have got their hands up in participants, and I do have one that has been sent to me directly in chat, but first, Margaret Murphy, you're up. Margaret, can you unmute yourself, please?
I was going to say, I can't see her. Is she muted?
Okay, well, she's sending a thing. Can our guests talk more about incentive program spends as they relate to web series? Does that fit in? How exactly does that fit in production categories?
Can I just clarify, like, what is a web series with relation to this?
Using the web as the medium as opposed strictly to animation or TV. Does that matter?
No, the platform doesn't matter. I don't think so much. I mean, well, the web, this is what I'll say about with the incentive. A lot of times I usually have to ask like 6 questions to be able to answer one question sometimes for the specific, because there are so, within the industries, there are so many different, even within the video games, but within like animation, the kind of the specifics of what you're doing and how it's being released does make a difference. So if there's a specific project, I can try and answer more specifically about that. Yeah, it kind of depends on what kind of things you're doing. Like with an animation, if it's an animated project, if it's an animated commercial, it would come through as a commercial. If it was a TV show, it would come through as a TV show.
Okay, so in other words, just make contact with y'all and then maybe have the conversation.
Yeah, because usually what happens when it comes down to a specific project is that we do ask that you talk to us so that we can ask a lot of questions about what you're doing. If you do have a project that you are considering for the incentive program, what you can do is the best thing and the first thing that we ask folks to do is to go to our website under the incentives drop down. On kind of like the main page there where you're kind of at the very, very top, there's a contact us button, which has a link to our inquiry form. It is basically basic information about who you are, what your project is, you know, what kind of, are you doing a video game or commercial or whatever it is, and questions about like your dates, your estimated budget and all that. It helps us to understand what your project is so that when we talk to you, we have some basic information to be able to talk to you about your project. I mean, we'll get inquiries about projects, you know, that are like we have the information on the website, but not necessarily the project doesn't actually qualify. So we can talk to you about that project and talk to you about what's going on, or if it does qualify, get more information. But it's a really good starting point for us to be able to have information before we talk to you about your project. So it's the first step in our in our process with the incentive program is to fill out that inquiry form. It is not the actual application. The link to the application will come later, but yeah, filling out that inquiry form so that we can talk to you more specifically about your specific project.
Margaret has one other thing. Here's another one. Have you ever had a request for an ARG, an alternate reality game?
We've had some VR projects come to the program, and
This
I
would be
don't
in the
think I've-
categories of things like I Love
yeah,
and that
yeah,
usually uses promos for other projects.
yeah. We've had, I don't think so. I've had some VR projects. There have been commercials, that are VR projects or things like that. Just about anything that involves like VR comes through as a video game.
Okay. Well, maybe I should also put one more line under this, is that you're not policy creators, and the incentive program and everything that the commission does is the parameters are set by legislation. So if anyone has anything that you're not doing right now, you're not the point of contact as far as changing anything that you're doing.
Yeah, good question. So if we administer the incentive, our office, the Film Commission, administers the program. A lot of the program is set up through the state legislature. The funding comes through, legislation as well. I think if you're interested in learning more about the program, a good thing to do would be to kind of sign up for that newsletter that Katie was mentioning. We will be sending out. We deliver a lot of information, and that newsletter will probably be coming out once a month. Once session starts, which is in just a couple of weeks. That starts, I believe, the first day is January 12th. It's pretty soon, and we will be giving legislative updates. But staying informed is a good way, because we will be communicating information about the program and just session in general as we know it too. I mean, you can always go online and look that way too, but we can hopefully be able to provide accurate information as we know it. Session's very long. It goes on for a long time. So we don't necessarily have like all the answers, but we can keep people updated. And that's a great way of staying informed and updated on what's happening.
It only happens every other year too. So
Yep.
It's every other year, and it's obviously there'll be a lot of information coming about the session, but there is a lot of more things that our office does and a lot of other programs. So we do communicate those out as well through those newsletters. Usually it's only usually those newsletters come out every other month, but last session, we did send them out on a monthly basis to keep people as updated as we could.
okay.
Yeah, during session, we find that it's best to use newsletters as a way to communicate what's going on.
There you go. Makes sense. Sasha Perez asked me, was curious about the division or program that Katie mentioned in Fort Worth. What was all that about? I think it was like a repurposed building that turned into a studio of some kind. What's all that?
Yeah, Red Productions did a renovation of a facility, and that was the Media Production Development Zone program that they participated in. Is there something specific you're curious about that? Because I would recommend checking out that flow chart, which goes into much more detail than the at a glance slide that I had.
Okay.
And if there's like a specific detailed question, we have two folks in our office, Allie Nichols and Tara Khanna, who manage that program.
Okay.
And just to add on to
potentially
that
has
too.
something detailed.
Yeah, and to add on to that, that program is a tax credit. So it's when you're building a facility or renovating a facility, the program and the steps that Katie was explaining lead to like a tax credit on those things. So it works well if you're doing a bigger project. If you're, updating the paint, it's not, that's not necessarily cost effective to go, do it that way. But if you are renovating a building or expanding or making an actual building, it would be something to look into.
Okay. Kyle Rainfeld, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, so had a question about the TMII application, the pre-production application for a game project. And so one of the requirements there is that you apply before you create your first asset. Does that imply that to go through that process, you wouldn't want to see like a demo or some sort of prototype of the project? Does it have to be fully on paper, or usually like if you're trying to pitch somebody, you have a little something for them to play? And I wondered how that process works for you guys.
Sure. The application, you don't need to send us any kind of playable content or pre-playable content. So the application is all paper. I think that's getting to your question. So the creation assets, we use the creation assets at the start of production. When you apply with the for the program, there is an actual, after you would have already submitted the inquiry form and we've talked to you about your project and kind of made sure that you meet the requirements, you know, that kind of thing. If you do apply to the program, what you would be sent would be a link to an actual written application. The questions on that application are things about your project, but they also speak to things like how many people are you hiring and those types of things that relate to economic impact and tourism, because that is the department that we're under here at the Office of the Governor. We do also ask you to provide a budget for your production, and that will be a budget of what you estimate your Texas spend to be. We also ask you to provide what we call a content document. There's information on our website about what we're looking for in that content document for a digital media project. So it's basically what kind of assets, there's a whole bunch of things that you can see on there, like what you're creating, but you don't have to send us something that would be potentially playable. The content document would take that place. We do understand that things kind of change in production sometimes, but we do expect that you have like a good idea of what you're making. One of the requirements of the program is that you actually complete the project. So to be able to get the money at the back end, you do actually have to complete the project. The other thing is that this, and is an important thing to keep in mind, the grant program is not funding for the project. You do need to have your funding in place, because that documentation of spend that you're submitting for that review are the bills you've already paid. So the grant check comes after you've made the game and probably released it. It's got to go through the whole review process. So it's money at the end that you can use to invest in another game or whatever else you're doing, but it's not going to be money that you're using to pay the bills on that project.
Gotcha. And then just to be clear, in terms of like the prototype concept again, would having that prototype or demo already, would that preclude somebody from applying to that? Like, would that be like a non-starter in that case?
If you are creating assets that are going to be actually used in the game, like if you start a production, there's like, you know, you're figuring things out and you're trying this and you're trying that and you're trying the other thing. And then you're like, okay, we got it. Now we're moving forward. Like the actual production is the start of production, and that's the creation of assets. So pre-production time period for you, you know, sometimes that's like months, sometimes you can go on like for a year, right? But once you've got it, like, this is what we're doing, we're going to start creating assets. That is your start of production.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Or all of them, or what? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, Chillinwood, Washington.
Hello. I was wondering, is there an SBA program that's pointed toward lower budget productions?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Is there an SBA program that is pointed toward lower budgeted productions? I mean, obviously, having the amount of number to even get a or qualify for the percentage, the incentive is rather high. So
Yes.
I'm wondering, is there another way to get to that number, period?
Funding wise, I'm not sure through the Small Business Association, through the SBA specifically, but where I referenced on the production tab of our website, there is also a film grant document as well.
Yeah, I definitely know about that, but they have a higher bar also. Okay, because I guess, and you already answered the question. The only way to change those numbers is to talk to legislature. I can't say it. To the lawmakers. Because me personally, I'm thinking we all talk about small businesses left and right, right? But if you make the bar too high, the small businesses won't be able to get to the point, you know, for this thing. But yeah, the only way to change that is to change the laws, basically.
Well, if you want, I can connect you with someone in our small business office over in economic development and see if they know of one. It may just be that I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick? Because I just applied for an SBA and I got 20,000, and the paperwork, if it's 20K and less, the paperwork is pretty easy and it shows up like within a week or two. It is a 30-year payment plan, and it comes back for the 20,000. I think I have to pay $100 a month over, you know, the next 30 years. And it had like, because of the COVID, there is a grace period. So I'm in deferment until that process goes over. So right now, that little sweet spot that you're looking for, that SBA loan, it is a loan, it's not a grant.
Yes. Right,
so, but at those rates, you got to grab that money.
Yeah.
Well, I would also advocate, check out, because like what I was referring to earlier, we've got small business under the resources tab. There is a funding tab that does list various different options that are available. I don't know if you've looked at those or not, but
I'll be honest, it's been a while since I looked at the website. But yeah,
I would say check that out. And if you don't see something there, shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect you with someone in the small business group over in economic development.
Cool. Like right now, because of the state of the industry, like a whole bunch of parts of the industry, myself and two other guys are basically doing VR development as far as film. So we can go in Unreal and we can tweak whatever, make whatever, go from Unreal, to Houdini Unreal to Max Unreal, just basically interact. But yeah, it was just all in Texas, and it's almost like you can, if you create one thing in Unreal, you can kick it out and make it to a flat screen for a movie, and you can make a game with the same amount of assets, and that's what we're trying to get at. And yeah, it's going to work.
Yeah, shoot me an email and I can send you the links to where I'm talking about on the small business section we have on our website, and then also potentially do an e-intro to somebody in our economic development small business team.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Great.
So I'm just going to add on to that too, with respect to the kind of the levels and the spends and all. There is work involved with the program, and we do see that sometimes at the lower levels, it's a lot of an undertaking when you're like a 2 or 3 person team, and it doesn't matter if it's like $100,000 or, you know, how big the spend gets, so to speak. It's not a difference in work. I would say take a look at our website at the program guidelines and you know, the information about the incentive program. In terms of like the minimum spend, it does seem high, you know, when you're not there, but also when you take do the numbers and the amount of things that are required to do, you do want to make sure that you do have a certain level of spend to make it worthwhile, to even at 100,000, if that makes sense what I'm saying there.
Well, the thing is that what I've figured out before is that you guys have to make money also. This is not just, hey, here's $5, make, you know, go with it, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
well, and just to
$5.
clarify, there's not, the state doesn't make money off it. It's all like,
well, it's going back
money.
to the individual businesses and.
Yeah, we're looking at, you know, again, it's all under economic impact. So it's the money that is being used to pay out is money that comes from the state legislature, obviously, that's appropriated to the program. So it's not a matter of our office doesn't make money on it. There's no fees or anything for that. The state doesn't make money on it. But what I'm just trying to get to is that minimum spend, while doesn't include obviously everybody trying to get started and make a project. The program does have, like there is a contract, and there is a lot of paperwork and work, which is why I know me, just me, I spend a lot of time talking to people about the program and coming about through the program and what you need to do. So while we want to make sure that we can include as everyone, and it is a lower, for commercial and video games with that 100,000, we also want to make sure that, that there's a, like a
Content that gets made.
What's
It's
that?
finished. The content gets finished.
Well, it's not just that the content gets finished, but but there is a lot of work that you are going to be putting into, and at a 5% rate at $100,000, like when you're trying to, like, especially as a, like where you're going to put your time. So it's not something that we don't think about, or or whatnot with those minimums, but there is kind of like, how are you going to put the time? And it gets, even with the 100,000 spend, if you estimate having 100,000, sometimes like you thought, like if you have 5 people working for you and you thought you have it, and one person didn't have, their ID or the paperwork, I would really encourage you to take a look at, like, and you can give me a call or send us an email too about what the kind of the requirements are, and start to be able to think of like what you would need paperwork wise. I know most people don't like to do the paperwork. If you're the people making the game, it was like a 2 different mindset.
I don't have a problem.
But
That's
that
no
way
problem.
that way we can kind of talk about like what it is, so that when it gets to the point where you can actually make those qualifications, that you have that information for what you need to do.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Luis Martinez, thank you.
Okay, so my question is how to get onto the production directory. And the reason I asked that is I've been working as an independent guy for 8 years. And with the exception of a few gigs that I will never, ever admit to working on, I have no credit on those gigs because I was a third-party hire, or the company's folded, or the games just never shipped. So I would love to be on there as, hey, look, I know what I'm doing. Do y'all have any recommendations for how to make that work?
Well, I would say, actually, if we're actually having virtual office hours tomorrow at 11 a.m. on the production directory. So if you want specific things answered about navigating the directory, that'd be a great time to tune in if you want to sign up for that. You can find it on our events calendar. You'll see it for tomorrow, and then there's a registration link for that as well. I would say let's schedule a call next week potentially, and we can talk about like what kind of backup you do have, to see if there's any specific niche that you could qualify to list as a paid verifiable credit.
Okay, I could do that.
Okay.
Awesome.
That was easy.
Yeah,
Thank you
just give me a call. We'll see if we can figure a way, as far as if you've got paid credits, we'll try to figure a way.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing up the office hours. I did see that in your directory.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we didn't have that in the presentation. I'm sorry, I didn't think to bring that up earlier. Lot going on this week.
No problem.
But yes, we've been doing a series of virtual office hours over the last several months. This will be the last one this year, and its topic is the production directory. So if you want to know, hey, how do I create a listing, or how do I use it? How do I search in it? Those kind of things. We'll be trying to do a walkthrough of things.
All right, hey, Tom Long had another question. I'll let him ask directly.
Yes, this has to go to the 120-day requirement. There seems to be like a little bit of a disconnect in understanding the reason why that 120 is there, because it's counterintuitive to game developers, because I believe it was, as Kyle had mentioned, about the asset and when that starts, and what is that real reason that 120 days is for that asset, is because in game projects, that's 120 days. That's 4 months out. So if I have an idea in my head and I'm an independent game developer, I'm not thinking that I'm going to have a concept and I can't make any assets until 120 days out. So I understand if, as Michelle mentioned, that is like for production start date. But is that because that 120 days is only there so that everyone that 70% or whatever that requirement of people working there 120 days prior to that all have residency provability of 120 days, or is there some other reason for that? Because it seems very not it's kind of a deal breaker for both sides.
Okay, so are you talking about the Declaration of Texas Residency form for the residency showing that you have lived in the state for
I'm
100?
asking,
Is that the one you're asking about?
I'm asking, why is 120 days magical for the first asset?
So the 120 days is the application window. So you can apply to the incentive program. So whenever your first day of creating asset is, so let's just say it's today. If this was the first day of your creation of assets, and you're interested in applying to the incentive, you can apply as far out as 120 days.
Oh, it goes both ways, what you're saying. It can be before or after?
So whenever you have to apply, the way the program is set up, you have to apply to the program before you start production. So if you're saying on your project, your start of production, which is the creation of assets, is today, your application window could have been you could have applied up to 120 days before today. So whenever, like and this happens because you think you're going to start in December and then you start in February, whatever it is. But whenever you have an idea of when you think you might be starting, from that day, you can apply. The earliest you can apply is 120 days before that. So we're not telling you when you have to start creating assets. We're just saying you can't apply to the program until that. It's just the way it's set up. There's like an application window. Part of that, I think, helps.
Wait,
so
can I
that-
just regurgitate what you said and make sure I'm understanding what you're saying?
Sure.
So like if I want to start a project 6 months from now, that's greater than the 120. And if I apply today, that's not going to work.
Right.
Okay, so it's a max. It's
the maximum. Yeah.
It's the opposite direction. It's not that you have to wait 120 days. You don't have to have your paperwork set today. Wait 4 months before you can start the process, because that's how I was understanding.
Yeah, no.
And I was going, that doesn't make sense unless I was a big big budget production where I have a team and I'm doing a half a year's planning ahead. As a small business guy, I'm thinking, how am I putting food on today, tomorrow, the next month, and so forth. So yes, thank you. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So it's a window. So whenever your start of production is, the way the program's set up, as far out as 4 months, essentially. But you got to do it no later than 5. And please reach out to us as soon as possible, because we got to kind of have some conversations and get some information before that. And you might think you're starting today and then you start another day, later, which, should be fine as long as you're still within that window. But yeah, it is the soonest. Yeah, I'm glad you asked.
So if you have ideas percolating, call Michelle.
Tom always does.
Oh yeah, I've got projects, but it's making sure that the projects get funded and the team is in the Texas window, because I have contractors all over the world, and then making sure I have that 70% inside, if that's the requirement, inside the Texas border, and knowing that to get the funding, then this helps me plan those a little better. But yeah, making sure that I have to plan something 4 months in advance, I'm going like, I got to think shorter windows, but yeah, okay, good, very good.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you have a project, submit that inquiry form, and then we can kind of talk more specifically, about that particular project or whatever project you have, to try and hopefully answer anything else too along the way.
Yeah, because right now I have 3 different projects that need funding, so very good.
Oh, Kyle Reinfeld had another question.
Yeah, just wanted to follow up on my first question. So given that the funding, the grant would come at the end of a project, and you suggested that we have funding upfront to fund the development of the first one, and the grant would kind of fund the next thing. So do you have experience, or I guess I'm just asking for feedback about the concept of working with a publisher on the current project to fund and help market something? Like, is that a relationship that is okay if we're going to apply to the grant program? Can we work with the publisher at the same time?
Yeah, you can work with your publisher. The part of the reason for having the funding for an applicant to already have their money in place is to be able to make sure that you can come successfully through the program. What happens is when you apply to the program, whatever your budget is, we use that kind of tier system that I was talking about earlier to figure out, like, your budget's $500,000, it qualifies for a 5% rate. So that grant money, that 5%, what we do when that project's accepted is we take that money and we set it aside for that particular project. So whether it takes you 3 months to make your game or 3 years, that money is sitting in a pot for you. So we want to make sure that you're going to be able to complete the game, because we're holding money aside. And that means that the next person doesn't have access to that money, because we're not going to take your money to pay somebody else, if that makes sense. So part of it is to make sure that there is a viable game that is going to come out of it, and we're not just setting money aside and it's sitting there and then nothing happens, and then other games or projects aren't coming through. That's part of it. But the other part is, like I said, is that we do need to make sure that you have the way of paying the bills, because this grant program doesn't pay the bills. So if you're working with a publisher, that's if they're funding it, that's not the problem. What we're going to look at is that you paid the bills, though. Like if you're the owner of the company and you've got the people working for you that are, you're paying, if you showing that you paid those people to make the game is what we're going to be looking at. Like, where your money came from, not so much, but we're going to look if you Kyle Game Production applied to the incentive program, we're going to be making sure that Kyle Game Production paid those people to make this game.
Yep. Yeah, I guess my question was just, so totally understand that. And I just wanted to make sure there weren't any gotchas in terms of engaging a publisher and kind of having that relationship in addition to this, agreement with your program. But I think that
we don't interact. Usually we interact with who the applicant is, and that's usually the production company. It's not the publishers. I will let you know that one of the requirements of the program is the use of the Texas Film Commission logo in the credits of the game. And it's a way, especially for games, to be able to market that this product was made here in Texas, and hopefully help to develop more interest in people wanting to make games here in Texas. When working with a publisher, making sure that they're fine with you using your logo and our logo is one thing that you do want to keep in mind, because if you're working with someone that's no, you can't use, Kyle Game Production logo or the Texas Film Commission logo, that is something that might be a little bit of thing to think about. But otherwise, we're not working with the publishers.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
I didn't point out to the chat that my background is actually from Moon Crash, the DLC for Prey, which if you follow all the way to the end credits, you will see the Texas Film Commission Texas Tornado logo. I always call it a tornado because it's not really a tornado, but it has kind of looks like a spinny thing around the logo.
It's a firework.
Yeah, it's like the lights,
firework of Texas.
Lights, yeah.
I was gonna say a dreidel because it's Hanukkah.
There you go.
Yeah, and that is really, just trying to really market, hey, this game or film or whatever it is was made in Texas as a place to do business. So that's partly why we use that and try to really make sure that, folks playing that game will see like, hey, this was actually made in Texas. So
It's also at the end of Seis Manos, the series, extremely violent kung fu cartoon by Powerhouse Animation. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, and I didn't know if I missed the question and answer, but being small business, I'm also on the payroll. Am I included in the payroll, or do I have to exclude myself in the grant money?
You have to be able to show that the company paid you. So if you look at the program guidelines, like sometimes like big companies will use like an ADP or a payroll company. A lot of times, there might be agreements or contracts, but there does need to be some kind of a contract or an invoice and proof that Tom's production company paid Tom as an employee or whatever it is. So take a look at that information. But yeah, definitely like reach out to me and we can try and figure out, what's going on. But you do need to be able to show that the production company, the applicant that's making the game paid. Doesn't matter that you are also the owner, but you do have to show that you received a wage for doing X. So like whether it's an invoice, the company's, you're billing the company and you're getting or whatever, like we need to figure out how you like show that you actually were paid to do a specific eligible job for the project.
And you need to have your DTR filled out.
Yeah.
I got that.
Get your
I'm
IDs.
120 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some unfortunate conversations with some folks that were like, I've got these people, they've worked for me for a year and a half and they're Texas. And then they go to get the form and the people just never got their driver's license, which I think legally you're supposed to.
You're supposed to have it done before then.
Yeah, it's just like now those people's wages don't count. Well, they will for the next one as long as they get their ID and it qualifies. But yeah, it is just kind of a thing that has come up when you're asking about things you don't expect. That's I think one of the things that some applicants have not expected is that they thought some of their employees were actually Texas residents when they didn't ever get their ID. So
I know every job I've had, they've maybe put my driver's license on a Xerox and take a photo of it, but then those jobs usually had someone whose job included HR, and sometimes that doesn't happen. And a lot of those company jobs exist with game companies. They may not even have someone whose job it is to do all the operations stuff. Like we've talked about tonight, there's paperwork, there's accounting, there's keeping records for all the way at the end, because the way this TMIP in particular is structured, it's a thank you at the end of the project. Thank you for doing business in Texas and paying these wages and completing the project and meeting all the requirements. It's a mint on the pillow, but some people might expect it to be something other than what it is. So thank you both for explaining how these programs work. I'm not seeing anyone else who are asking any questions. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add for this evening?
Thank you. You didn't have to do this, or maybe you did, but I thank you anyway. I thank you very much.
We were happy to be invited.
It was a pleasure to be here. I talk to a lot of people, but I don't actually, I'm at a computer screens a lot during the day. So you don't get to do a ton of things like this. So it was really great to be able to be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And if you think of questions tomorrow or next week, just contact us through our About tab on the website, or pick up the phone and give us a call.
And open office hours tomorrow morning.
Or on the directory. You can come visit me tomorrow, Luis. I expect to see you there.
Well, once again, you've chosen to spend your Thursday night with us. We will be back in February with another show. Thanks for a great 2020. We kind of got sidelined after starting off really strong in January by packing the house at Capitol Factory, and then, well, we couldn't really meet anymore and be safe about it. But thanks for the opportunities to host these kinds of shows. Thanks to Michelle and Katie from Texas Film Commission, and everyone for paying attention to us, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thanks.